Welcome to Tuesday, April 14th. The Day Weather Podcast today is going to be talking about snow coming again. Confidence is getting very high that moderate to heavy snow for portions of southern Wyoming, northern Colorado, and western Nebraska will come into play late tomorrow and through late Thursday. Now, temperatures are going to moderate some by Friday and the weekend, so I'm not all bad news. Not as cold this weekend and into early next week, but it's going to be cool. Our temperature pattern certainly is going to get more spring-like, but for those of you looking for 60s and 70s, we don't see them yet. But let's spend some time on this next snow event that's coming our way. We have the right combination of things coming together to give us a really high confidence that several inches of snow is coming for many of you in this podcast area. Now, this is where we are right now with the jet stream. There's that nice big Gulf of Alaska ridge pumping in all that cold air and digging out this deep trough across the United States. Now, it's hard to see, but this little kink right here is what's going to be causing our weather. Doesn't look like much, does it? But this upper level feature is going to expand and intensify as it heads south. Yesterday, that feature was up here on the north slope of Alaska. Now it's making its way south. As it makes its way south, notice the trough that gets carved out over eastern Idaho, portions of Montana, and western Wyoming. What's going to happen is this system here is going to help draw in west coast moisture from the Pacific and also reinforce the Canadian air that's coming into play. What we have is a confluence of events. We have Pacific moisture, Canadian air, and we're going to have a strong jet stream wind forming right here. This is a pattern we've seen dozens and dozens of times. And I want to show you what helps drive this forecast and what gives us a lot of confidence. What I'm showing you here with all these green and blue colors are the jet stream level winds at 30,000 feet, with the green shading here showing strong jet stream winds moving in a west to east fashion. Notice this little area of yellow right here. This is called a jet streak, or an area where the jet stream winds are moving well more than 100 miles an hour. Now notice where it is. Here's Wyoming, here's Colorado, here's western Nebraska. What we see is a convergence of Canadian air and Pacific moisture and the strong jet stream winds lining up right on top of each other. You take this and you mix it with our high terrain features across this area, and you're going to see a pattern where you're going to get a narrow band of snow forming under the strong jet stream where the Canadian air and the Pacific moisture and the jet stream all match up. So this is a very high confidence event in terms of it getting to be very snowy over this area here, and we'll show you what the forecast charts look like. So when we have these things come together, the jet stream, the Pacific moisture, and the Canadian cold, it's a good recipe to make it snow around here. This is the precipitation output through Friday afternoon. You can see this band of blue lining up along with these areas of yellow in that same region where that strong jet stream axis was. So we're looking at this system producing some good snow along the I-80 corridor. That's going to be a travel problem. Also, look at the northern and central mountains of Colorado. Going to see some big snow out of this. Good snow in the southern mountains of Wyoming. And again, good snow in the Wind Rivers and western mountains of Wyoming. Late season snowpack surge continues. Could see some really big snow here in the Summit County, I-70 corridor mountains of Colorado out of this. And you can see we're going to get snow out on into the plains as well with this system. This is what snowfall looks like when we zoom in a little bit closer. So you can see Cheyenne, down to Kimball, down to Sidney, up to Wheatland, up south of the Casper area, the Laramie Range, the Snowy Range, the Sierra Madres, Estes Park, and then some front range areas of I-25. Going to see some snow out of this. It'll be plenty cold for that. So as we go forward, after we get past the snow, Wednesday night and Thursday, by Friday of the weekend, there's a glimmer of hope for some more spring-like weather. This is by Monday. We get a little bit of a ridge that comes into the Rockies. West Coast air begins to come in from the desert states, so it's not going to be terribly warm, but it is going to warm up. By 10 days from now, by next Thursday and Friday, a more westerly flow is coming our way. Notice something. Notice up here in the Gulf of Alaska, There's no ridge. What we have up in the Gulf of Alaska is a bit of a trough. What that means is a more westerly flow for next week. So good news, while next week won't be really warm, it's going to be warmer than it is now with temperatures closer to average. Pushing it further out by next weekend, the weekend of the 26th and the 25th. The weekend of the 25th and 26th we need to keep an eye on because here comes a west coast low. This is typical for mid to late April to have a system come in like this. So we're going to have warmer weather this weekend through a good chunk of next week. By late next week and next weekend, we've got the next trough that's going to come on through. So it looks warmer next week, but not necessarily dry, especially taking a look at that weekend of the 25th and the 26th. As we go on out a little bit further, we see that system swings through and a more westerly wind flow is coming in right at the end of April. And again, notice the Gulf of Alaska doesn't have a ridge, but it has a trough. So that means more of a westerly flow. So there's a little glimmer of hope that right at the end of April into early May, we may start to see more of a spring-like pattern and maybe not as cold. It won't necessarily be dry, but it won't be as cold. So we're hoping here that the next 4 to 5 days will be the bottoming out of the coldest temperatures of spring, not necessarily dry and not necessarily not stormy for the rest of the month, but looking a little bit better than what we're suffering through right now. A little bit of an update on that comet. We've talked about this comet at times during this podcast. Bad news. The comet is breaking up. Notice you can see 1, 2, 3 fragments of the comet. We were hoping this was going to put on a big sky show in the month of May, as it was going to come really close to the Earth and into our solar system between the Sun and Mercury during the month of May. But now that it's breaking apart, the show is not going to be nearly as good, so it's going to be a little bit of a disappointment. Thanks for watching and listening to the Day Weather Podcast. We'll talk to you on Wednesday.